do you think that Pakistan has what it takes to become a world leader in the AR space?
Hell yeah.
Okay, okay. All right. Tell me why.
Yeah. First and foremost, a very creative people.
Yes.
I just saw yesterday Lahore was deemed by UNESCO as a city of literature.
Having chai is like having a heart-to-heart with someone without realizing you're having a heart-to-heart with them. And that's what I've been doing these last few months with Pakistani diaspora all over the world. I want to welcome you to season 1 of Shaam Ki Chai.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, my name is Nitasha and welcome to another episode of Shaam Ki Chai, where I interview Pakistanis doing really cool things. And today I'm really excited to have Faizaan Ghauri on our show. He is a leader in the augmented reality and virtual reality space and also the Chief Executive Officer at World. So thank you so much for being on the show, Faizaan.
Assalamu alaikum and thank you. It's great to be on.
I really want to take it back to the beginning and learn a bit about what part of Pakistan are you from and where did you grow up?
Sure. So I was actually born in Karachi
Okay.
in '86 and actually moved to the US when I was about a year old. So pretty early on, I migrated over to the US. Most of my family is primarily now based out of Lahore, Pakistan. So they were originally in Karachi, but then migrated over to Lahore.
Got it. And so then you grew up in the US essentially, right? Did you go back to Pakistan a lot?
Yes. Oh yeah. So that's I was very privileged in that manner because my family, essentially, my father was working in the U.S. and decided in his early 40s to start a business with his brothers in Pakistan, which incidentally became a tech company. So because of that, it really enabled me to spend a lot of time in Pakistan. So almost every holiday I would get the opportunity to go back to Pakistan. I'd always had to take guided study in the US because I would always extend my trip and end up spending months on end there. And that was almost on an annual basis that we were able to spend a lot of time in Pakistan. There's one thing that I'll never forget. So when I was about 12 years old, I was going to pick up my cousin from the airport in Lahore. And there was a gentleman right next to me who looked really, really perplexed and distraught. And I asked him, what's going on? And this gentleman, clearly from sort of a simple background, probably worked as a driver. And he told me that he found 20 rupees on the ground, and he's been trying to figure out who this belongs to.
Oh my God.
For the last so that's the equivalent of it's a few cents now.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it was really beautiful to me because it just showed the level of courtesy in the culture and dignity and integrity of folks in Pakistan. Because I would imagine in the US, it's sort of like, hey, I found some money on the floor. It's mine now.
My money.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so, there's a lot of terms in Urdu that they don't really have a good translation in English. So there's one word, muravat, which
Yes.
means sort of means like courtesy. There's just a general sense of courtesy and respect and care for your fellow human.
What did you
Thank
go
you.
to school for? You went to UCLA, correct?
So that was for my MBA. So undergrad, I actually went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut.
Okay.
And yeah, it was interesting. So at the time, we'll get to how I got into tech, but at the time, I was very much very literature and film focused.
Oh,
So
interesting.
and also politics as well. So I sort of, someone early on told me that, especially undergrad, it's going to be tough for you to remember what you learned in undergrad. It's more about how you learn. So explore something that maybe isn't going to be your career
Right.
later on.
Right.
So I actually ended up doing, I did film, literature, and then I ended up majoring finally in international relations
Okay.
because in the context of post sort of 9/11 US, I was obsessive about politics, and I
Right.
wanted to really get a vantage point through an international relations perspective. So that was my focus there. Wesleyan's a great, extremely progressive school, small liberal arts school in Middletown, Connecticut. Had some amazing experiences there. One of the things I'll never forget is last minute Barack Obama was our commencement speaker.
Whoa.
So yeah, yeah, it was a really incredible. It was originally supposed to be Ted Kennedy, but he had gotten sick, so he called in a favor and asked President Obama to come in, who was at the time he had won the primary and was now going up against John McCain. So that was just experience I'll never forget, and really drove me going forward.
Incredible. Could you imagine having Obama in like your contact list and being like, hey, I'm sick. Can you do this thing for me?
Magical day.
That's incredible. So then how do you go from this interest in politics and a degree in international relations and then followed by an MBA into tech, and then not just tech, like sexy consumer tech, but like AR and VR, which is such a niche within tech in and of itself. How does that happen?
Yeah, so after school, I actually ended up going into finance. So I'd done a few internships.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like the hot thing to do in 2007, definitely in 2007.
Right?
Yeah. So I end up joining Merrill Lynch in Los Angeles and working there. And it's interesting. So I started June 30th, 2008 at just like at the pit of the financial crisis. So I'm going in, just fresh out of school, and the whole world is crumbling around me. And Merrill at the time was at the center of the storm as well.
Yes.
So we didn't know if we were going to, we just got our first job. We didn't know if we were going to survive there. My managers there at the time, they had only seen equity and bond markets rise over the last few decades. So they'd never experienced a bubble bursting as well.
Right.
So,
and it was quite a bubble burst. It wasn't a small burst. It was an explosion, really.
Absolutely. I mean, there were days where we just thought the financial system was going to be coming to an end. And everyone is tracking what's going on in policy, and it seemed like there was these two sort of extremes playing out between letting the big financial institutions fail to nationalizing them. So we were either going to go into a Great Depression, or we were going to go and move towards a more socialistic style of government. And so that was really great for me because I got a real understanding of risk that I probably wouldn't have gotten had I gone in finance in any period. However, finance is really challenging for me. And the reason is at the same time, social media is exploding and the whole mobile application revolution is exploding. Yes. And what was frustrating me is I've got access to all these amazing technologies like Facebook, Instagram. They're coming on board. They're connecting me to the a global society. And at the same time, in finance, it's so compliance driven that you can't even Google anything without hitting a firewall. So I was seeing this huge asymmetry between how to access information in my personal life to how I could in finance, and it was frustrating me like how old the tech was. So it was actually because of the tech that we were required to use in finance that I decided to leave.
Wow.
And so I knew it sort of validated to me because tech had always been really important to me just from my family's own background in tech. And I'll never forget the day I got my first Mac when I was 10 years old. So I made the jump and
Okay.
I joined an enterprise software startup. I was one of the founding employees there.
Okay.
And they were focused on, they're working on this new thing at the time called SaaS,
Mm-hmm.
focused on e-commerce and basically B2B e-commerce with SaaS. And that was really, really interesting because I had no sort of formal education. I didn't have a computer science degree,
Right.
but what I did have was a few engineers at that startup who really loved talking about their craft. You know,
Okay.
they love talking about engineering. They love talking about tech. They sort of became teachers for me,
Mm.
and they would spend hours with me just explaining to me how databases work, how front end works, how a back end works, how a services layer works. And out of that, I gained enough knowledge that we ended up selling that business.
Okay.
And I decided enterprise was cool. I learned a lot there,
Mm-hmm.
but mobile and all the engagement going on in gaming was very exciting.
Yes.
So sold that business, and at the same time took two different parallel threads. First, I decided to go get an MBA.
Okay.
It was always a dream of mine to do so.
Okay.
So I came into UCLA, and at the same time, I co-founded a mobile games company with my cousin, uh, who was working in Pakistan. We had identified an incredible game development talent in Pakistan. And
Mm-hmm.
so daytime, I was focused on business school
Right.
and I was trying to basically apply everything in the mobile games company that we started
Right.
called Itchy Fingers. Uh,
That's a really cool.
and so yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
And Fawad was I'm the kind of gamer that plays like one major game a year.
Got it.
Fawad plays every single game. And
Okay.
so the way we sort of worked together was that if we can build a game that both gets him on board, who's a
Right.
hardcore gamer, and someone who's a casual gamer on board, then that means we've got something special. Then at the same time, Oculus gets bought out by Facebook,
Right.
and I get access to a DK1, which is the first sort of the development kit that they had.
Sure.
And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know what? A lot of the engagement mechanics around mobile have been defined, but
Right.
this new space, which is VR and then subsequently AR,
Yes.
what's going to be great about this is none of the rules have been defined so far. None of the engagement mechanics have been defined so far. So whilst maybe in mobile gaming, we were sort of working off existing game mechanics,
Right.
this great space of VR and AR, we have an incredible opportunity to actually define engagement mechanics go forward and go forward with experimentation. So that's what got me really into VR and
Mm.
AR. And I remember meeting the CEO in business school, Brendan Uribe, who was the CEO and one of the founders of Oculus, came,
Mm.
and we had actually built in preparation for that, we had built this motorcycle racing game in VR,
Yay.
and I got a chance to show it to him. And also complained to him that my DK2, which I ordered a few months ago in front of everybody in class, that my DK2 hadn't arrived. And so he told me to email him afterwards, and he'd make sure to get it sent over to me. So he was my customer support. So that's what got me really involved in VR in Pakistan, where we had this incredible game development talent. And we knew that VR and AR was going to be the next big platform. I felt that we had a chance in Pakistan to move away from sort of taking defined tropes
Okay.
in mobile and creating our own. So what we did early on was when we got access to an HTC Vive, we started hosting hackathons in Pakistan.
Oh,
And yeah, it was called the Throwathon. And we hosted it. We hosted two of them at LUMS.
okay.
And one was primarily focused on VR. So we got a bunch of Unity developers together. And what was so cool about it was that, and we invited students from all over the country to come join us. And I saw the students' reactions who come from very different backgrounds, some of them coming from rural areas, and they would put on a VR headset. And when they come out of it, you just see a sense of wonder on their face, that they had truly been transported and they just had an experience which was like almost otherworldly for them. Right. So that was a huge driver for me, saying that, look, this can be a truly transportable technology. Pakistan has always had a limited forms of entertainment.
Right.
Games had been one of the areas, and it had that's why there's such a passionate gaming population in Pakistan, because it's one of those few forms of entertainment there. So I saw VR and AR expanding on that, where it wouldn't just be games, but it'd be all these different experiences that would transport us to other worlds and really open up our headspaces.
You say AR and VR a lot, and I feel like other people that are not experts in the space sometimes use it interchangeably. So why don't you give us a rundown of what is augmented reality and what is virtual reality?
Yeah, so I think simply put, you can think about virtual reality as a closed environment that transports you elsewhere.
Okay.
So, when you're in a VR space, it doesn't necessarily have any relationship to the actual space you're in.
Got it.
Now, AR is different in that AR does have a relationship to the physical environment around you. So AR, rather than a closed environment, is you're actually immersed in the real world, but there are digital augmentations that are placed around you. Now, the line is blending a lot, because one of the technologies that is sort of bringing these together is computer vision. And so you're seeing even VR headsets actually have a major AR component, because what they're doing now is they're actually mapping out the physical environment, and then on top of that, they're overlaying the space. So that's why there's new terms coming out like XR as well.
Oh, interesting.
That are trying to understand. So I think going forward, there isn't going to be as much of this delineation of VR and AR. It's going to end up being sort of this hybrid, where you'll still be in a physical space, but you can be completely transported elsewhere. And then on the spectrum, it can be anything to just a small digital augmentation that you see in your real world environment.
So we were chatting earlier, and you were telling me about how World is using AR to build solutions for the future of work, right? And I thought that was a really cool concept, especially at a time like COVID, when we don't really know what the future of work is like. So why don't you tell us a bit more about that, and what do those solutions look like?
Yeah, so we just launched a product called Next.
Okay.
And it's actually, a lot of World's, history over the last few years has been very much focused on where a concept called digital twins.
Okay.
So digital twins are effectively a 3D replica of a physical asset. In the case of World, we're trying to replicate the entire world, both indoors and outdoors.
Okay.
And what's so valuable about them is that digital twins are much easier to understand complex systems. So in this world where we're moving towards connected devices, Internet of Things, there's so much data coming out of these devices, but when you look at them on, say, a dashboard, it's very hard to understand. So what a digital twin actually does is it connects in all of these IoT devices, and you have this almost like living replica of an environment, whether it's a smart city or a smart building.
Okay.
So we had seen a lot of traction in the smart building space. So we were being used for a lot of smart offices around the world. And when COVID hit, it actually changed the whole dynamics of the sort of type of technology we're building, because a lot of our focus had been a digital twin for your smart building environment. But thanks to lockdowns and thanks to COVID, we're now working a lot more flexibly. So what we ended up doing with Next is really a platform that allows you to connect to your digital work community in the form of your smart building, whether you're working from the office or whether you're working from home. So you're connected to your environment, because one of the things we lose with working from home is that sense of camaraderie, those collisions we would have in the office there. So we
Right.
were trying to basically create this digital virtual world that you're connected to, whether you're in the office or whether you're at home. And then also be able to track productivity, understand emotions and mental well-being as
Right.
well was a big focus for us, because of course, we had seen, we've all been experiencing through isolation, it's made us all lean in on our own mental well-being. So we
Yes.
were trying to understand each other's mental well-being much more, because we weren't able to before. Your manager could
So
come.
as you're
Yeah.
describing this, it really seems like you're building a digital world, and that sounds amazing, but there's also a lot of social responsibility that comes into that, because I mean, you have things like even just gaming addiction, right? People just can't get off of like their video games, right? And so now when you're
Yeah.
immersing people in this world,
Yeah.
they're already isolated from human connection because of a pandemic. Now they're getting that, but that's actually not the real world. And so what kind of social responsibility do you have as a leader in the AR and VR space to just be conscious of that as you're building? Or do you think that responsibility falls on the user to self-regulate their own usage of a product?
Yeah. So I think it's both the leader and the user, but I think it also falls on us as product leaders. And I feel that, if we look at the mobile revolution,
Yes.
we were all trying to build these sort of utopian societies. And we did, and there was that book that was quite famous, Hooked: How to Build Habit Forming Products.
Yes. Yes.
So this was like the Silicon Valley mantra is you want to build a product as addictively as possible.
Yep.
And I think we've all now recognized the detriments of that. Maybe we didn't really understand the scope of how this would affect society.
Right.
And I feel with these new platforms, VR and AR, we have an opportunity again to really assess what are going to be the impacts of these technologies on users, on people, and on society. And we had to design them a lot better. Now, there are some things that I think inherent in VR and AR that will make it a much better technology. So, 60% of human communication happens through nonverbal cues, when we're actually with each other face to face. And if you look at social media, take Instagram as an example, you're getting the iceberg of human communication. There's only so much that's been communicated, and through such a small sort of filter and color grade. Now, the beauty of VR and AR is because now you're getting gestural and you've got avatars. It makes communication a lot more similar to being in the same room with each other. And I think out of that, there's a lot more that we will be able to communicate with each other. And so instead of having this narrow viewpoint on one person's world and a narrow viewpoint on my world, by expanding that, I think that's going to keep us sort of more connected, and it's going to be probably more healthy for us to be able to get a full spectrum of sort of the human experience with one another. You also have to look at the business models as well, and inherently with advertising, monetization models, it's all about engagement, it's all about eyeballs, it's all about keeping you on screen. So probably a better model is more so to free to play, or sorry, for subscription type models, or where you pay for the content up front.
Yes.
So that there isn't any sort of vested interest in keeping you engaged for as long as possible.
That makes a lot of sense. An interesting point you brought up earlier was that you build products for, all over the world, and then you brought it to Pakistan, right? And I think that's really interesting. But then my question to you would be, why should a country like Pakistan care about AR and VR, where you could argue a lot of the average person's basic needs aren't being met? So why is it important for AR and VR to be in the Pakistani space?
Yeah, no, great question. It's a question that to be honest, I grapple with every day.
Okay.
because there's definitely challenges in the country. You know, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know, it's almost like we're in Pakistan, for the vast majority of people, they're still dealing with roti kapra makan, you
Yes.
know, these sort of basic needs that they have in the country. So, but at the same time, the interesting thing is there is a significant population, and not just the you know, just not upper socioeconomic classes, but even down to middle and working classes that are actively engaging in technology.
Okay.
They have smartphones. They're constantly using WhatsApp to communicate with each other. They're watching YouTube videos. So these technologies are certainly informing, you know, even the average Pakistani.
Right.
So I see VR and AR, especially AR, as being sort of the next phase in Pakistan's growth. So like in COVID, whilst most industries were down, the technology sector in Pakistan has been booming.
Yes, it has.
Technology exports are up significantly in here. And there's a really big shift towards digital skills digital skills and literacy training going on in the country right now. So the exciting thing about AR specifically is that in mobile, there is, you're still working with 2D symbols to understand 3D actions, but in AR, you're actually in a digital twin, so you're in the real world. So even the barrier of language goes away. You know, as long as you live in a 3D world and can understand things in a 3D world. So this is going to change a lot of blue collar jobs in Pakistan as well. I give this example of a lot of the construction sector, which is, you know, a major industry in Pakistan. The agrarian sector is a major industry in Pakistan. And whereas maybe education or almost management being on your head day to day was required, hour by hour is required for you to complete tasks. Now with AR, and eventually the AR will be disseminated and distributed in Pakistan, you're going to be able to just understand how to do your work in a very intuitive manner, where language is not even going to be a barrier. It's just going to be, you know, how to put this widget into this widget, and you're going to see that play out in real time. So I think it's going to help level up even the average Pakistani and allow them to, you know, partake in the, you know, in an economic system in the absence of even having, you know, an education.
Do you think that Pakistan has what it takes to become a world leader in the AR space?
Hell yeah.
Okay. All right. Tell me why.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we, you know, Pakistanis are first and foremost a very creative people. You know,
yes.
I just saw yesterday Lahore was deemed by UNESCO as a city of literature, and I think first and foremost for us to be successful in AR takes creativity. So we've got some great art institutions. We're producing great 3D artists. You know, NCA is a great example of it. And you know, I think there's a very robust civil society and culture in Pakistan, whether it's music, art, fashion. So I think there's first that big underpinning, which is needed, because if you're exploring new ways to interact with people on this new platform, creativity comes at the core, and you have to be able to connect different neural pathways that maybe didn't exist before. So that's first and foremost. Second thing is the engineering talent in Pakistan is very strong.
It is.
So I think you know, I think there is great talent in STEM coming. There are great institutions in Pakistan. There needs to be more work on particularly the computer vision side. Here, we need to produce more data scientists. We need to have more people truly who understand artificial intelligence, teaching and guiding children. But I've met a few really incredible professors and leaders now who are, you know, best of the crop. And there are a lot of Wapistanis who have gone their PhDs, gone, you know, formally educated in the US at, you know, the top Ivy League schools in things like artificial intelligence and computer vision. And now they've came as national duty once again. They've come back here to go and teach children in some of the latest and greatest technology. So between the creativity and engineering talent, certainly we have all the foundations to be really successful in AR and VR, and we were quite successful in mobile as well. I mean, so many of the major tech companies have outsourced their work to Pakistan. You know, whether you're talking about some of the FANG companies, by some way, shape, or form, there is a lot of work happening here. So now the next step for us is to actually build our own IP, and between creativity and engineering talent, I think we've got the potential to do so.
Awesome. So then tell me your predictions for the Pakistani startup space in 2021 now.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of exciting things going on. I just saw that Indus Valley Ventures, they just raised a fund here specifically focused on Pakistan. You just saw Startup Bazaar raise 6 million in the space. So very, very, very optimistic that this is going to be the best year for Pakistani startups ever. I think COVID has been actually
that bad either, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think COVID has been less of an issue in Pakistan, and that's maybe by function of having a younger population. So the tech sector has thrived. I think the government is doing a lot of smart things right now. So on the payment side, State Bank of Pakistan is very open to new and emerging payment technologies. They just launched a payment gateway called RAS, which is going to help with micropayments and very much and probably going to be used especially in the charitable space. So I think there are a lot of I think government is getting on board and understanding. I think the current leadership understands that we need to be quite tech forward. And then I think in general, because we're starting to see these early successes in fundraising, that's only going to drive more and more exciting opportunities in Pakistan.
All right. Okay. So I've bombarded you with tech questions for the last little while, but I want to completely turn it around with my last question that I ask everyone around Shaam Ki Chai. So this is the one thing that I think ties all of us Pakistanis together. Everyone has a Shaam Ki Chai story. So please tell us a bit about the Shaam Ki Chai traditions at your home. What is it like? What do you eat? What do you drink? And what do you talk about?
Yeah. So do you have your chai? I'm going to take a sip of mine here.
I got my chai. There you go.
Here. There you go.
Cheers.
Cheers. So yeah, it's really interesting. So so recently, my grandfather passed away about a month plus ago.
Okay.
Thank you. And he was an incredible human being, just a larger than life figure. He, I would remember all the Shaam Ki Chai experiences with him, because so he was based out of Lahore, and had just an amazing story. So I'd come over, have Shaam Ki Chai with him. He was a big feeder, so he would always have a lot of food that'd go with Shaam Ki Chai as well. A lot of biscuits, and he wouldn't let you, leave him unless you left with a full stomach. And anytime you saw him,
right.
But I learned a lot from those Shaam Ki Chai moments with him, because I think he represented to me like the truest version of an entrepreneur. So he came from a village he came from Bahalpur, which is a small village on the in the outskirts of Punjab, and with 6 young children, no formal education, no experience outside of Bahalpur. He moved them all to the big city in Lahore, and really within years built an incredible business for himself, which got him traveling the world, meeting heads of states, ambassadors, and it was amazing. He went from Bahalpur and he moved to Lahore when he was in 1959, 1960, and by 67 he was traveling all over Europe, making big business deals. And so it was amazing how much courage he had when he really didn't have anything. And I think one of the things I would always learn from him is we talk about what allowed him to explore so many different worlds. And he was a voracious reader. So that was, I think, even though he didn't have access to much, the fact that he could access different worlds through literature kept him really immersed in a global order. And he was always very curious and empathetic about the human condition and understanding so many different types of people. So, so for me, those are sort of the most unforgettable sort of Shaam Ki Chai moments where he would just tell me his story throughout time.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
And
Thank
thank you
you.
for being on the show. It was great to have you on. It was great to chat with you. I hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time on another episode of Shaam Ki Chai.
You too. Thanks so much, Nitasha. This is a great platform, and I'm really excited to see some of the further Shaam Ki Chai episodes that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Khuda Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.